You are about to leave the known world behind and embark on a visceral journey into the pulsing heart of a steel giant. Forget the glittering ballrooms, the crystal glasses, and the forbidden romances that fiction has sold you. That is only the gilded surface. Today you are going down into reality, you will descend into the private hell that existed just a few meters away from the paradise of first class. This is the brutal truth behind the boilers of the Titanic, the smoking engine that powered the largest moving object ever built by the human hand. Imagine yourself now, in April of 1912. You are not on the deck, feeling the pure, icy Atlantic breeze on your face. You are going down, step by step, down narrow, grated, oily metal staircases that seem endless. The sound of the wind disappears, replaced by a deep, mechanical, constant hum that makes your teeth vibrate in your mouth. The air, which up above was fresh, down here becomes dense, heavy, and almost unbreathable. A sharp, metallic smell of sulfur, grease, and burnt oil floods your nostrils and clings to the roof of your mouth. As you descend, natural light dies completely. Now, your only illumination comes from weak, yellowed electric bulbs, hanging from filthy cables that sway with the vibration of the ship, casting dancing, frightening shadows across the riveted steel walls. You finally reach the bottom of the hull. Before you stretches an endless, dark, claustrophobic corridor. The walls radiate a heat you can feel on your skin, even from a distance. Welcome to the realm of the Black Gang. It is here, far from the eyes of the wealthy, that the real voyage takes place. The first physical shock is not visual, it is thermal. It is a slap of heat that hits you with violence. Down here, the average temperature is 50 degrees Celsius, but near the mouths of the furnaces, the heat is enough to scorch the hair on your arms. You feel sweat burst instantly from every pore of your body. It runs down your forehead, burns your eyes, and soaks your clothes within minutes. There is no air conditioning. The ventilation system is rudimentary, just metal ducts that bring a breath of air barely strong enough to keep you from passing out. The air is visible. It is a heavy haze, saturated with fine coal dust that floats like a black cloud. Every breath is a conscious effort. You feel the dust going in, scraping your throat, coating your lungs with a thin layer of soot. And there is the noise. Silence is a luxury that does not exist here. The environment is a deafening industrial symphony. The constant roar of fire, the metallic pounding of shovels, the hiss of steam escaping through valves, and the groaning of the ship's structure struggling against the sea. The steel floor beneath your boots is not solid, it vibrates. A constant, rhythmic vibration, as if you were inside the ribcage of a mechanical beast. To work here, you have to forget that a world exists outside. In the middle of this haze of coal and steam, you see shapes moving. They look like demons in a painting of hell, but they are just men. This is the Black Gang, firemen and coal trimmers. They are covered in soot from head to toe. The only white parts of their bodies are their wide open eyes and sometimes their teeth when they clench their jaws from the effort. They do not walk. They march in a rhythm forced by the machine. The work is brutal and relentless. Imagine gripping a heavy iron shovel and throwing coal into the mouth of a blazing furnace over and over for 4 hours straight. It is not just brute strength, it is technique. The coal must be spread evenly inside to keep the steam pressure constant. One mistake and the pressure drops. One mistake and the ship loses speed. They work in 4-hour shifts, but those 4 hours drain the energy of an entire day from an ordinary man. Their muscles are always tense, their skin covered in burns and small cuts that never heal properly because of sweat and grime. They drink lukewarm water from filthy buckets just to replace the liquid they lose in torrents of sweat. They are the human battery of the Titanic. Without the sacrifice of these bodies, the luxury above would not move an inch. To understand the scale of this work, You need to look at the numbers these men face. The heart of the Titanic is made up of 29 gigantic boilers. Some are as large as a two-story house. Inside these boilers, there are 159 furnaces, 159 hungry mouths that must be fed with coal, minute after minute, 24 hours a day. The consumption is insane. The Titanic devours more than 600 tons of coal per day. That means that every single day of the voyage, these men, using only shovels and their arms, move a black mountain of fuel. The coal is stored in bunkers, huge metal rooms beside the boilers. The job of the trimmers is to enter these bunkers, where the dust is even more suffocating, and level the piles of coal, making sure it reaches the firemen. It is dangerous work. Coal slides can bury a man in seconds. Accumulated gases can cause explosions. All of this colossal engineering, all of this steel and fire, has a single purpose: to turn water into high-pressure steam to spin the 3 gigantic propellers that push the ship across the Atlantic. When the shift ends, these men climb up to their quarters, located in the bow of the ship near third class. Their lives are a cycle of work, exhaustion, and a brief rest disturbed by constant noise. For them, third class is the only luxury they know. A cramped bunk, a simple meal of stew and bread, and perhaps a cigarette smoked on the lower deck, staring out at the dark sea. The contrast is shocking. While they try to scrub the coal that has been embedded in their skin for years, on the upper decks, the orchestra plays waltzes. Up there, dinner is served on fine china, with 7 courses and imported wines. Down here, the food tastes like coal dust. They are invisible. First-class passengers would never come down here. Their world is clean, perfumed, and brightly lit. The world of the Black Gang is dark, filthy, and hot, but there is a quiet pride among them. They know they are the ones who keep the lights on. They know that without their sweat, the champagne above would be warm, and the ship would be adrift. The voyage went on, majestic and invincible, until the night of April 14th. Deep inside the ship, nothing hinted at danger. The rhythm was the same, the heat was the same, but suddenly, a sound. It was not an explosion like in the movies. It was something far more terrifying. A deep, metallic, prolonged groan, as if the steel of the ship itself were screaming in pain. The sound tore through the air above the roar of the furnaces. The ship shuddered. It was not the roll of a wave. It was a violent sideways jolt that made the men grab onto shovels and walls. Tools fell. Coal dust rose from the floor. The lights flickered, plunging the corridor into total darkness for a second before coming back on, weaker. The firemen stopped. The silence that followed the groan was the heaviest thing they had ever felt. They looked at one another, grimy faces marked by confusion. The unsinkable ship had been wounded. The response came fast and freezing. Just a few meters from where they stood, the steel plates of the hull had been ripped open like sardine cans. The water of the North Atlantic, at below freezing temperature, began to invade the hot hell of the boilers. The thermal shock created instant clouds of steam, blinding all sight. The rush of water was not a drip. It was a high-pressure, cold, lethal waterfall, blasting into boiler room number 6. Chaos set in. Officers shouted desperate orders. "Put out the fires!" If the freezing water touched the overheated boilers while they were still under pressure, they would explode, tearing the ship in half instantly. Instead of running, these men had to stay. They had to open the furnace doors and drag the burning coal out, throwing water and ashes to cool the machines, while the icy sea water climbed past their ankles, then their knees, then their waists. They worked frantically in a race against physics, fighting the steam that burned and the water that froze. The battle was lost, but they bought time. The watertight doors began to drop, sealing the fate of those who were on the wrong side. Many managed to escape to the upper decks, only to find chaos and a lack of lifeboats. Others were trapped in the depths, in labyrinths of stairways, as the ship's growing tilt made any climb impossible. But some stayed by choice. The engineers and electricians remained at the generators, fighting to keep the lights on until the very last possible second. They knew that if the lights went out, panic above would be total. They purchased time with their lives. When the water finally swallowed the last lights and the ship sank into eternal silence, the story of these men was often forgotten. The Titanic is not just a story of the wealthy and an iceberg. It is the story of the brutal sacrifice of the men who lived in fire and died in ice. This was the restored reality of the boilers of the Titanic. If you felt the heat and the fear of this journey, subscribe to the channel. We bring real history to the surface. Until next time.